Clara? Madonna
Lo
santa.
vedo, io ancora sto scrivendo in
Ciao Luciana.
Ciao Marco, mi sa che ci siamo solo noi o mi sbaglio?
Sì, perché anche il test, diciamo, di partenza parte alle 11:10, in realtà,
Ok.
quindi siamo un po' in anticipo.
No, perché appunto non sapevo, siccome è la prima volta che uso Zoom su questo computer, quindi non volevo avere problemi perché l'avevo usato sull'altro. Questo
Sì,
è quello del ministero e quindi insomma
Hai
non
fatto
volevo avere
bene.
problemi di... senti, ma vabbè, ci saranno questi saluti. Il mio saluto è un cenno ai problemi, insomma,
Sì,
che
ovviamente
avevi
in inglese,
sottolineato tu.
Luciana.
Come?
In inglese, ovviamente, sì.
Sì.
Ah, ok,
No,
perfetto.
in inglese. No, se no
Ecco.
No, infatti sono un po'...
Hai già preparato qualcosa o vai a braccio?
No, ho un qualcosa
Ok.
perché temevo di poi di impappinarmi così e quindi...
Ma hai fatto bene, guarda,
E vabbè,
guarda me.
no, infatti...
Anch'io mi sono preparato, diciamo, la cosa, me la sono fatta anche rivedere da un collega del comitato scientifico
Sì,
che è
insomma, io
inglese.
ho messo in rilievo 2 o 3 punti, ma è veramente un
Va
saluto.
bene perché, guarda, sia quello che si aspettano, diciamo, è quello, un saluto istituzionale, no?
Sì, infatti. Io lo dico che sono il dirigente delle bonifiche, quindi insomma queste cose qua che ci deve essere stimolato l'incrocio di informazioni, lo scambio di informazioni, insomma queste cose qua. Niente di
Perfetto,
che.
bene,
Ma
bene.
dura pochissimo o mi sbaglio? Perché ho visto cioè dura un quarto d'ora.
Noi possiamo prenderci, diciamo, il
No,
tempo che
io
ci
no,
mette.
no, perché ho paura poi nella conversation, non vorrei capire fischi per fiaschi, quindi poi chiudo, faccio il saluto, sento
Va,
tutti e poi chiudo.
va benissimo. Sì, sì, un augurio, poi puoi fare alla
Va
fine un
bene.
augurio
Diciamo è
sul...
l'inizio di
Sì.
qualcosa. Va bene. Allora
Perfetto.
aspetto qui, io disattivo
Sì,
l'audio
sì,
disattivo
tranquillo.
l'audio.
Aspetta, prima che disattivi, mi guardi se si vedi,
Sì.
diciamo, una
Vedo
cosa.
un logo.
Sì, il logo di Remtech. Aspetta, voglio mettere
E adesso
perché...
c'è Hans Slenders che si sta
Ah, bene.
connettendo. Chi è Hans Slenders?
Nicole?
Ecco. C'è.
Hello, I'm sorry.
Hello,
Report.
hello Hans.
Hello, I'm just testing my camera. I'm working on another background.
Hello.
Okay, very well, very well.
Let me see if I can change this background. Yeah.
Okay, very nice, however.
Yeah, this is Dutch. I need to have another background, but I can only do this when Zoom is open.
Okay, very well.
Noi siamo più domestici, abbiamo le case.
Hi Nino, welcome.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Buongiorno, dopo molte
Buongiorno.
difficoltà tecniche ce l'abbiamo fatta.
Infatti
well,
queste avrebbero creato tanti problemi, quindi non volevo. Buongiorno.
Hans, would you try to share your screen for a moment just to check?
Yes. If everything's correct, you can see a different background now. Yeah.
Okay.
I will check if I can share my screen. Let me check. Share my screen. Screen 1.
By the way, Nino, did you prepare something for the, let's say, the hello, the beginning?
Marco, disattivo l'audio.
Perfect. Okay. Nino, did you prepare something for? Yeah, it's working. Thank you.
You can see my screen. Okay. Let me.
Yes, perfectly. Yes.
Wait a minute.
Stop sharing.
Yeah, stop sharing. I'm trying to find the button, but it's it's gone now. I'll do it in a second. Sorry. Where is it? Where is it? Where's the button? Let me close this one. It's always difficult to find the right buttons. It's suddenly in a
Let me try if I am able to come with my screen.
I want to.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
You are able to see, let's say, the general program.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So basically, if one would share something else, it means that also it's a danger, because if you are speaking, someone click the wrong button.
That's the risk. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a risk. Nino, I can hear you. No, at the moment, no, Nino, you have the microphone disabled.
Devo evitare di parlare.
Ok, Marco.
Che non parla.
Ok, Nino, ti sento. Ti sento. Ti dicevo, sei pronto? Hai preparato il discorso per l'inaugurazione?
Sì, ho messo delle piccole slide, vuoi che le condivido mentre le dico?
Sì, molto brevi, Nino, però mi
Sì,
raccomando.
assolutamente.
Vai, prova a condividere.
I'm going to leave you guys. I'll be back in 15 minutes or so.
Perfect, Hans. See you later.
Allora,
Ci deve essere share screen.
allora, come faccio a condividerlo? Qua è un po' complicato.
Sotto c'è un pulsante share screen o condividi schermo verde in basso.
Che non vedo. Sul PowerPoint, quindi?
No, è su Zoom.
Ok.
Su Zoom.
Ah, sì, ok.
Prova.
Sì, l'ho attivato, però non me lo permette, non so perché.
Strano, perché sei cost.
Adesso?
Eccolo. Sì, adesso sì.
Ok.
Ecco.
Perfetto.
13 sono tante, Nino, sono troppe 13 però.
Sono veloci, sarò velocissimo.
Ma sono tante, noi abbiamo 15 minuti in 5 persone.
No, ma guarda, sono molto... Ti assicuro che ci sto nei 15 minuti.
Massimo
Massimo 10...
Nino, qui non sei nella presentazione. La presentazione
Sì.
tua è mercoledì.
Sì.
Ecco, noi se abbiamo 15 minuti in 5. So se mi sono spiegato.
Ok.
Quindi...
Io questa presentazione, sebbene sia di 13 slide, la faccio in 4 minuti, 3 minuti.
Ok, 3 minuti va bene. Mi raccomando però, Nino, perché sennò bisogna... siamo fuori coi tempi, perché ecco, abbiamo la FAO, abbiamo 15 minuti in totale, perché poi ci sono 4 presentazioni altrettanto interessanti, e quindi ecco...
Sarò rapidissimo, anzi per me meno ci sto e meglio è, visto che il mio inglese è faticosamente...
No, staci, ma volevo dire, non è che devi fare velocissimo una mangiata, ma di cose, ma
è
vai
solo una
su
piccolissima...
cose veramente importanti per capire, la gente non sa chi è il commissario.
Solo chi siamo e quello che facciamo, assolutamente.
Esatto, perfetto. Così
Va bene.
mi può andare bene. Per ragioni di tempo. Poi, Nino, abbiamo sempre la tua presentazione mercoledì, se non sbaglio, e lì poi...
Ma non è martedì? Non
è martedì, scusami, adesso non mi ricordavo il programma.
Ok.
Domani mattina a 11:30 sempre.
Sì.
E allora lì puoi fare, diciamo, una cosa più lunga. Ok.
Allora ci sentiamo tra un po'. Io
Tra un
disattivo...
po', sì, noi iniziamo ufficialmente. Puoi mettere in muto la telecamera cosa, io tanto rimango qui un attimo a aspettare gli altri.
Benissimo. A più tardi allora.
Marco,
Sì,
Marco,
dimmi.
a che ora iniziamo ufficialmente?
Allora, 11:30 apre la room per tutti. E quindi ecco,
quindi qual è la scaletta?
Allora,
parli tu?
Io per primo, poi ci sarà la Piotr Voida dell'European Commission, poi ci sarà la FAO, quindi Natalia Rodriguez, poi Nino e poi te, Luciana, per chiudere
Fine. Vabbè.
saluti.
Ok, sì, perché tanto auguro un buon lavoro a tutti alla fine.
No, quello che fa il Ministero, no? Adesso non vorrei andare da un estremo, Nino, che mi fa 13 slide, a te che mi dici ciao, il Ministero vi saluta. No, ecco, l'attività del Ministero.
2 minuti e mezzo. 2 minuti e mezzo.
Va bene.
Ok?
Ok, perfetto, aggiudicato.
Ok,
a dopo.
A più tardi allora, see you later.
Sì, ciao. Pavlos?
Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning, Pavlos. Finally, you managed to enter.
Yes.
At the moment,
Yes.
we are just the speakers and the authorities that will say hello at the beginning. So, yeah, I had a great problem this morning because an electricity interruption at 10 for 10 minutes, and
oh my God.
I was really afraid in case. I send an email to everybody. Dietmar, that is already present, as already experienced, can make the initial speech of hello to everybody. But you know, when you have something, Houston, we have a problem. It's sad, no? And when you have something very, very unexpected.
Yeah, sometimes things happen, and I think with this all, online meetings, people should be more relaxed because things may happen, as it happens in real life, and I think it's part of the process.
No, in fact, and yeah, that's. I've seen you, Natalia, and Dietmar. You exchanged your views on the final panel. I'm just a little bit afraid of the time because I just realized that let's say some authorities have some slides, and we could run out of time. But however, you will be able to manage it perfectly. We have time. We have time till 1:30 officially. Then unofficially, another 10 minutes is open the Zoom let's say the Zoom room. Then a 1:45, that's finished suddenly. So I know that
convenient.
what may happen, it may happen, Pavlos, that a very, very important talk with some of the speakers that go in detail or something, and it's a pity to interrupt them. But however, in any case, not more than 1:40, let's say.
Well, I think as it says, we can also suggest that there is the chat room where all these people, they can exchange further on the interesting questions.
Yes.
And then it's more relaxed, no time constraints, and they can create a private chat where everybody that they're interested, they can join and do that thing.
Okay, very, very good. That's it. And last but not least, when it's nearly finished, the last word should be, let's see at 2:30 for the next, I don't remember even the name. Just of the second one, because you know,
sustainable remediation and risk management. Okay.
Remediation, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I also add this. You received this PDF, Pavlos. Yes, you have. I will share it at the moment for let's say for the first talk, and then for the next one. Everybody received it. Could be the welcome, let's say, of the room.
Yeah. Okay.
Joy T, I can see you online. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I was just quietly waiting for you to finish.
Okay, very well.
Very early, am I?
Would you like to make a try to share your screen
Sure.
with the presentation, of course?
Yes. Stop the other screen sharing, so that's okay.
Yes, yes, you will interrupt me, please.
Okay.
Okay, very nice. Okay. Very good.
And then when I finish, I'll probably have to press stop share. Or...
No, yes, basically yes, so that Pavlos, Dietmar, and Natalia will be able to understand that you have really finished. Yes, so
it will be the thank you slide. You'll know it's the last one.
Okay. We honored to have the national Australian framework for remediation here, and it's very, very amazing that
it's the first time we're presenting it to an international audience after it's been endorsed, so that's exciting for us.
in fact yes.
Yeah.
Also so many international speakers and attendants, and we have at least 1,000 people registered. It means but doesn't mean that now we have 1,000 people. It means no, you know, the registration is free, so it's a difference when you have to pay a fee. When you have paid the fee, probably you will join. So if the registration is free, everybody could register himself, and then of course someone could be just on the interested in one session, the PFAS session or the landfill session, I don't know. And so it's fine also have 50 or 70 people. It's already a good number.
Yes, the timing is not bad. I think it's early here. It starts about 7 o'clock in Australia. So that's not a bad time. We can attend quite a few sessions in the evening.
Ah, okay.
It's not so bad.
Of course, yeah, Europe is, let's say, we have some time zone difference. At the moment, we are in the, let's say, in the morning. So I know that you are nearly to dinner.
Yes,
so, yeah.
I had an early dinner.
Oh.
Excuse me if I fall asleep.
No.
Oh, it was so much better when I was in Ferrara last year. I will miss that.
I know, who may say in the future, maybe next year will be in Ferrara, we hope.
It will be happening again.
Yes.
It's a very large conference in Ferrara when you have it there.
It was last year in September 23rd. Yeah, it's completely different this year.
Okay.
It's 5 days, and we don't have the live demo, just the virtual live demo. We don't have the poster session because it does not have any sense, and we received just one proposal for poster. And however, 5 days instead of 3. That's incredible, no?
We'll have the same challenge, Marco. In September next year, we'll have the Clean Up Australia conference, which is normally a big global event.
Yes.
It'll be interesting because it'll have to happen virtually as well.
Ah, okay. Very good.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. When will it be?
I don't know the exact date offhand, but it's normally in September as well.
Okay. Pay attention not to overlap with RemTech next year.
Yes, sure.
Okay, because it's
maybe
nice.
we can have maybe it can run for 24 hours RemTech and then go into CRCK.
Yes. Why not a marathon?
24 hours.
Yes, why not? Good idea.
Things can be done differently. Sometimes there are opportunities.
Yeah, in fact. Dei, I can see you online. Dei?
Hello, Marco, how are you?
Hello, Dei, very well. Unfortunately, I had some problem with electricity, and it may happen that I will disappear. No problem, because you are already a good team, and I'm sure you will you will do very, very well. Also better if I'm not present. Okay.
I'm sorry to hear that. I will try to attend both sessions for the whole time. I mean, I'm surprised to see how good the connection is right now. I hope when we have more attendees, it remain this connection. That would be really nice.
It's probably because we are still 10 people. Let's see then how it works with all the camera on. And by the way, Dei, try to share your screen briefly with PowerPoint or PDF, whatever.
Okay, I will do that right now. Let me see. Do you see it?
Yes, perfectly. It's working very well.
Okay, good.
Good. Yes.
Okay, then I'll stop sharing.
Stop sharing, perfect. I can see online Paul Bardos. Hi, Paul. Can you hear me?
Marco, I hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Fantastic. That's really good because I only got these yesterday.
Okay. Paul, can you try to share your screen with PowerPoint?
Yes. I've got to clear a few things off it, and then I'll do that. Bear with me.
You should have a button, a green button.
Yeah, I've done it before on Zoom, and I was just clearing all the litter off of my screen. So we will present the PowerPoint from our end.
Yes.
Okay. Share screen.
Okay, it's working. Try to put, let's say, all screen slideshow from the first slide if it's working. That's it. Okay, that's it.
Can I ask you a question, Marco?
Yes, please.
Will the slides be available for people to download? Because I've added some extra slides at the end for them to look at if they want to.
The conference will be recorded, and the video will be available online. Regarding the slides, we think to release them, but you know, then you can send us the final version to share. No problem. But however, Paul, be aware that we are under recording. So if there is something that you don't want to disclose, yeah, it will be recorded and everybody will see the slides.
That's fine. They are okay, and you've already got a version you can publish. So I'll try not to swear or to tell really terrible jokes.
Go fast, maybe. But however, if one people do the screenshot, of course, we'll capture the slide you have. It's
cool.
Marco, I have another question, if that's possible.
Please, Hans.
I'm going to share my screen, but I'm going to show the web tool of Nicole. So I'm going to step out of my presentation into the website of Nicole and share my screen, just in going through a couple of images of the website. I guess that's okay.
Yes, I think so. If we want to make a try, you can do it right now, because we have still some time. I don't know what is the time.
10 minutes left. Yeah. Let me quickly try this.
Okay, try. In the meanwhile, Natalia, hi, I can see you.
Hi, colleagues. Hi, Marco.
Hi.
You can see my screen now with my presentation. Yes.
Yes, it's your email. This is your presentation.
Yes, let me quickly go to slide number 11. And this is an internet link.
Yes.
Now the website should show. Do you see the website of Nicole?
Yes.
Yes, perfectly.
Okay.
Let's say headline of the website. Yes, it works.
And now we see the web, and then you see.
Now it works. We are 10 people. Let's see later if.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
I'm done. And I found the button.
I have a question for Hans. Nice shirt, by the way, Hans. How do you get that marvelous image behind you instead of the room that you're in?
Hans, you are muted.
Paul, if you go to the left-hand corner, on the bottom, there you see stop video. This video. If you click on the arrow in the video, you'll see an option: choose virtual background.
I'll have a look for that. Thank you.
Dietmar.
Hi, Marco.
Hi, Dietmar, hermano. How are you?
I'm fine to be with you. Still struggling with my 2 screens, so that's why I'm staying quiet.
Don't worry. Yeah, it's. I know that I also have a couple of screens here, and it's difficult to understand which is the right one. And however, you know, you have received my email. I had an electricity blackout this morning, and I'm not sure if I step down in any moment. But in that case, you have to take the leading role. But it is 10 minutes. In 10 minutes we will start, of course. But yeah, you have already the introductory speech from the scientific committee, and in that case, yeah, if you can take this role.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Marco.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, basically we have to wait till another 7 minutes. We tried everybody of this. We have all the 4 speakers here. We have we miss Piotr. Just Piotr is missing. Piotr is missing. I will send him a message.
This is just a tip for anyone who wants to do this clever thing that Hans has done with a virtual background. Doesn't work with a white shirt.
You could choose another background, perhaps, Paul.
It can't tell the difference between the wall and me.
Ooh.
By the way, Paul, I saw that you had 36 slides. I thought you had 15 minutes for your presentation. Do you?
Yes, basically you have 15 minutes, Hans. Of course, it's not a problem of 16 or 17, but not 30 or yeah, because it's interesting also the debate, the final panel that Natalia, Pavlos, and Dietmar will manage at the end. There is one of them that will control the chat for any questions. They have prepared also some questions for any of you. So better to save some time for the final debate to see also some feedback from the audience.
So I don't know what your problem is, Hans. I've seen you give 40 slides in 20 minutes. But, no, the remainder of the slides is an annex.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. So there will be no possibility for questions after our presentations, Marco. At least I expected that.
No.
That's fine.
No question at the end, and let's say everything will be addressed later. Piotr.
Ciao Marco, hello.
Hello Piotr, how are you?
I'm okay, I'm okay. I'm very sorry, I missed the link, so that's why I was not able to connect.
Don't worry, we see you a little dark.
Okay, I will put some light.
Also you, Luciana, if you have a light near you, it's better.
Yes, I will do it.
Yeah. For the other, we can see you perfectly.
It's okay?
Yes, better.
Is it better now? I try to play with the light.
Oh, very good, very good. Piotr, I will I will make a quick introduction to the conference. Then I will leave the floor to you in order. You, then Natalia, then Nino, that have some slides. Nino, be short, remember, and Luciana. We have 15 minutes, then we will leave the floor to Natalia direct again, that will introduce the session 1 with Pavlos and Dietmar. Pavlos, Dietmar, if you want to add something at the beginning, feel free to do it. And let's see also the time, how much is the time, so that also another top thing to consider.
Excuse me, Marco, 15 minutes for all, Natalie, Nino, and me.
Yes,
huh?
Basically yes.
No?
If we take longer time, it means that the final panel will be shortened, and so it's something that anybody wants. So better to keep it short, and let's say that's it.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we have a little problem that I now realized, that we are online, all people is online. Oh, they are opening right now the floor. You see more and more people joining. And so I would put, yes, let's say our agenda for Remtech Europe. I don't know if we can wait till some 2-3 minutes, because you know people can join from now. No, so basically they have a few time to come. People. They are all. Let's wait till another minutes, at least to have all the people that are joining into the conference, and then we will start. So just 1 minute more. Okay, guys, let's start with officially. Let's start Remtech Europe edition, digital edition 2020. I cannot thank the Remtech Europe committee because whatever this look like is the scientific committee that is speaking to you now, not just Marco. All 25 members supported the organization of Remtech Europe by giving of our time and knowledge during the preparation of this event. We put together 17 sessions, as you can see from from the agenda here, including 3 special sessions, 1 live demo that is on the 23rd of September, and the 2 training courses on the afternoon of Friday, 25 of September. Nevertheless, some thank yous are called for. The first thank you is for all the people behind the scene. Silvia, Simona, Clara, Francesco, Diego have worked so hard in recent months to make this event happen and are ready to address any potential problems. I wish to thank you all the exhibitors and sponsors. I can't name anyone because you are too many. You will see them during the session or downloading our full program or surfing the Remtech virtual exhibition. I and all attendants say thank you because if this event can only take place because you trusted in this virtual fair challenge called Remtech Europe. With your sponsorship, we were able to organize everything and make it free for anybody to attend from anywhere on the planet. Anyone from a remote developing country in any continent can follow the conference for free. All that is needed is a mobile phone and an internet connection. This is an asset, I think, because to get a better world from the environmental point of view, sharing knowledge of new technologies and practice in those countries that will be the next generation project manager, control authority, lawmaker, permitter, and land developer. Last but not least, another thank you is for you, the attendants. More than 1,000 have registered to take part in Remtech Europe. Thank you for your trust, and I hope everything will go fine. Some practical information. During the conference, you will be able to ask questions in the Zoom chat. Questions will be managed by the chairs at the end of all presentation in the discussion panel. You may also contact the speaker afterwards through the Remtech platform, where there is another chat called Alfredo's Cafe. Enter and search for Remtech Europe channel. Now, for cutting the ribbon this year, I have 2 great international institutions, the European Commission and the FAO, and then the Italian Commissioner for Illegal Landfill and the Italian Ministry of Environment. So, thank you for your attention, and the floor is now to Piotr first, then to Natalia, Nino, and Luciana. Thank you, and enjoy Remtech Europe.
Hello, good morning, everybody. I'm Piotr Wojda, working for the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. Thank you very much, Marco, for this introduction. And I would also like to welcome all the participants, ensuring you that I'm very curious about the different presentations and the discussions that I will be following here together with you. And also, I would like to thank the organizers for their great and fruitful efforts. It's really very important conference, and I'm very glad to be able to participate. Thank you very much. So maybe a couple of words about the political context. I think that the conference, it's a very timely event because Europe is working on the new European Green Deal. We are talking here about clean environment, circular economy, about restoring biodiversity and cut pollution, which is very important for RemTech. Maybe just to mention one ambition of Europe, it's a zero pollution ambition. So the Commission, together with its scientific Joint Research Center, is working on this zero pollution ambition, which touches upon different aspects of preventing pollution from air, water, and soil. Once again, very important for RemTech and all the activities that we will be talking about here. Just to mention, the group where I work at the JRC is working on point diffuse contamination, and also working on the observatory of all the processes. So summarizing, thank you very much for inviting me to this conference. I will be glad to follow, and I'm happy to see fruitful discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco, and welcome to all. Indeed, it's a great pleasure to be here with you today, and I would like to use this opportunity to reiterate a big thank to all the exhibitors, sponsors, and participants, but above all, to the RemTech Europe team, who have made an exceptional effort to make this new edition a reality despite all the difficulties. I'm convinced that this new format will bring the benefit of this conference to an even wider audience than in previous editions. It also shows that there is a higher interest on addressing global soil pollution. It will be an opportunity to share the global interest in unraveling all aspects related to the assessment of known and emerging contaminants, the existing formulas for monitoring them, the need to create enabling policy frameworks, and the best and most innovative remediation techniques, always keeping in mind the three pillars of sustainability: environmental, economic, and social. FAO and the Global Soil Partnership, for which I'm working, we are highly committed to tackling soil pollution at the global, regional, and national levels. And we want to join our effort with yours in raising awareness, preventing, controlling, and remedying environmental pollution, and especially soil pollution. It is therefore an honor for me, on behalf of FAO, to be able to share with you this week, which promises to be extremely interesting and fruitful. I hope you will enjoy all the presentations and the live demonstrations, and take advantage of this event to create networks and partnerships. Welcome to RemTech 2020, and enjoy all the conferences.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I am Colonel Nino Tarantino, and I am part of the Office of the Extraordinary Commissioner for Illegal Landfills and head of the Coordination and Operational Implementation Division. Following an infringement procedure, Italy suffered a sentence. this sentence, for not having adapted to 2 European directives on environmental uses. From that moment, very high fines and are paid in each semester for each of the landfills. And so, the Italian government wanted to appoint a commissioner who could direct all administrative proceedings in order to escape infringements as quickly as possible. After 3.5 years of the 81 inspectorated landfills, 48 have been regularized, with the consequent economic savings and environmental improvement. This is the situation in time. What are particularities of the commissioner? Why does it work? For these reasons, in my opinion. This is an example of a screenshot taken from the website.
No, we are not able to see your PowerPoint. Do you have to do share screen?
Ah, okay. I'm sorry. Okay. It's okay now? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. After 3.5 years, this is the situation. 81 inspectorated landfills, 48 regularized. This is an example of a screenshot taken from the website created specifically by the structure of the Extraordinary Commissioner. And this is the organization of the Commissioner structure, made up of 10 total units, a very lean and dynamic office. This is the organization line of action. In order for a former illegal landfill to be removed from the infringement procedure, it is necessary to demonstrate compliance with certain conditions that the European Commission has set and which is verified through a very accurate analysis and documentary investigation. This is the operational method of my office, with informative, planning, and operational. And I and all the Commissioner Office thank all participants of the always effective and efficient REMTech organization. Thank you, Marco. Thank you for all. I'm sorry for my English, not very good.
That's fine, Nino, no problem, no problem. It's important more what you do as an institution.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Luciana, is up to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marco, for introduction. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to REMTech International Conference Europe. First of all, let me introduce myself. I am Luciana Di Staso, manager of a remediation site of national interest for Italian Ministry of Environment. I'm pleased to be here because this is an opportunity to discuss an important topic for Italy in an European context. This is the reason why I'd like to emphasize two aspects of remediation: reforms and research as a change to give remediation in the proper place among the European priorities. As we know, we don't have a specific directive to handle the problem of the contamination. However, each country has a specific regulatory framework. In consideration of several complex cases of contamination, Italy has a well-structured legislation. Hence, we realized the need for a reinforced exchange of expertise with other EU national institutions during the period of reform activities. We should address remediation as a useful tool to achieve circular economy targets in a soil regeneration field. The exchange of expertise on legislation could accelerate the ongoing reform process and allow us to give the answer we need to solve the problem of land use. In order to make the legislative reform process more efficient, it's necessary at the same time to properly invest in the field of technological research. Therefore, efficient technologies that guarantee decontamination in the shortest amount of time and the good reforms might ensure faster responses to the contamination-related problem. As a result, we will safeguard health, environment protection, and a greater circularity of previously affected resources. We are looking forward to working together on the same path in order to exchange all information we have gathered so far. I sincerely thank you for being here with us, and have a good job. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Luciana, Nino, Piotr, and Natalia. Sorry, Natalia. We have finished the introduction of Remtech Europe. Again, thank you all to all the attendants. At the moment, we are I see more than 50 people now. And so I will leave the floor to the chairs of this session, that are Natalia, Dietmar, and Pavlos. Have a good work, and I'm sure also the panel will be fantastic from your question and the answer from the speakers. Natalia, floor to you.
Thank you again, Marco. Well, I want to welcome you to session 1 of Remtech Europe 2020, Policies and Frameworks to Address Sustainable Contaminated Sites Remediation. Nowadays, all sectors of society demand and must be committed to the sustainability of any action. But there is a need for enabling political environment and technical expertise to guide and help quantify this sustainability, so that is understood well as a concept and applies suitable for improving the overall benefits of projects in a specific societal and stakeholder setting. Today, we have 4 speakers with us who will bring us examples of policy frameworks and collective technical actions to mainstream sustainability into pollution remediation actions. Please remember to keep your questions for the final discussion, because we will not take any question after each presentation. Now I give the floor to Dietmar, who will introduce the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. Hi from Vienna. Welcome to all participants. Glad to be with you. I will be your guide to the speakers and the journey to the world. So I'm here on behalf of Common Forum on Contaminated Land in Europe. So it's a regulators network. And we had some 10 years ago, or in 2013, we published a joint position statement on risk-informed and sustainable remediation. So I'm really, really happy to see it growing. And it's all about what Marco addressed already. It's about people, it's about planet, and it's about profit and how to balance it together. Well, to introduce the session once more is for the speakers. Please speak slow and clear. Remember, well, you have 15 minutes. I'm your watchdog, and I will bell 2 minutes before the 15 minutes are over. Questions, well, all the participants are invited cordially to already during the presentations, well, deliver your questions, and then we will pick and work on at the end of the discussion with the panel. So I hope you will enjoy the speeches. And so we start in Down Under. So we move from Austria to Australia. They have the kangaroos. And I'm happy to introduce you to Jyotish Najit. Jyoti, happy to see you. And well, you tell us all the news, what you've been working for a long time in Australia. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dietmar. It's a pleasure to present at RemTech. Yes, the kangaroos are about having their supper now and they're ready to go to sleep. It's 7 p.m. in Australia. It's a good day from Australia. Just bring my slide up. Got it. So I'm assuming you can see my presentation, Dietmar?
Yes, everything perfect.
Okay, great. So welcome to my presentation, which is on Australia's National Remediation Framework. I am Jyotish Najit, the program leader for the Best Practice Policy Program in CRC Care. For those who do not know CRC Care stands for Cooperative Research Centre for Contamination Assessment and Remediation of the Environment. It is a partnership of government, universities, and industry. So the National Remediation Framework, or the NRF, was endorsed by all heads of EPAs in Australia in November last year. So that was a very significant achievement for us, and it's been a culmination of a number of years of work. In this short presentation, I will talk about the national policy drivers for the development of the NRF, how Australian frameworks have moved from a focus of assessment into the inclusion of remediation principles and practices. The framework is available and ready to be downloaded as we speak from a dedicated user-friendly website. I will have time to provide a very broad overview of the NRF in this presentation. In the second quarter of next year, we will try to run a short course on the National Remediation Framework, which will go into each of the guidelines in detail. I think this is about the same time we expect a COVID vaccine to be out. So it's a good way to remember this, but that's another issue. There are some key drivers for sustainable development in Australia. These will probably be familiar to you in most places, wherever you are. Firstly, urban renewal and urbanization. There are many legacy sites in Australia. From petroleum manufacturing sites, a deindustrialization process leads to a few legacy sites. There are landfill sites and railway sites. Population pressures result in a demand for more clean land. This is especially important to minimize urban sprawl. Minimizing urban sprawl will ensure properly planned builds that are closer to the urban centers and brownfields in lieu of expanding outwards into the clean agricultural pristine greenlands. It is estimated that 60 to 80% of contaminated sites are in urban areas, are contaminated. Secondly, with increasing community awareness of contamination, there is now increasing accountability for industry and regulators. And this is overall driving higher operating standards in the industry. Another need for sustainable development is for improved efficiency and effectiveness in the contaminated sites industry, leading to economic, social, and environmental benefits. Why harmonize? So there are 9 jurisdictions in Australia and just as many regulators, EPAs. Therefore, each jurisdiction has several pieces of legislation and guidance on site contamination, and increasingly on remediation as well. It was very challenging to work around existing regulation and practice. With the development of the NRF, it is possible to see a convergence in the practices, given that years of discussion have occurred over the NRF between EPAs and industry members. There has been incredible input from all regulators and a number of very experienced practitioners. We aimed to find commonalities across jurisdictions. We also identified critical elements to develop the common standards so that it is acceptable to all EPAs. We are at a good outcome now. Now the harmonized NRF is supported across all jurisdictions and has formal endorsement from the heads of EPA. You don't have to read off the slide. It's a very small font, I know. It just shows an overall picture of an assessment framework that we have in Australia, and it was first completed in 1999. And it is working well. At the time, states had up to 30 instruments in each jurisdiction on assessment. alone. This NEPM, or framework, harmonized and bridged gaps in assessment. It relied on a tiered risk-based approach assessment. So as you move, usually from left to right, up the tiers, the end result, more and more details are needed from the assessment. The end result is to have sufficient certainty about whether or not there is an unacceptable risk to receptors. If there is an unacceptable risk, some remediation or management action will be required. And then it is at this point that we start to see the benefits of NRF emerge. So the assessment framework came out 20 years ago. It was revised once in 2013. So during the development of the NRF, many concepts were explored again, like remediation objectives, risk-based approach, sustainability. And there are still many gaps even after completing this new remediation framework. For example, we don't have cleanup criteria for a range of contaminants. The purpose of the National Remediation Framework is to have a nationally consistent approach to contaminated site remediation and management. Together with that assessment framework that I showed, the NEPM, a complete set of national guidelines is available. The benefits of having a national remediation framework is the facilitation of things like protection of human health and the environment, which is the overall objective, to have effective and efficient remediation, and to have a net community or societal benefit from remediation. The audience for the framework are practitioners and regulators, and normally these are your mid-level operators. So some familiarity with the contaminated site sector would be required. So the NRF has a section called philosophy. In this section, we provide information on the context of the NRF. So things like the background, jurisdictional arrangements, purpose of the framework, and intended audience. And I've covered this in the earlier slides. It also has a number of principles, and I will go through this in the next slide. So it's always worth going through the principles, I believe, because we're often trying to work towards these which underpin the National Remediation Framework. The first principle is Precautionary Principle. There needs to be a careful evaluation to avoid, wherever practicable, serious or irreversible damage to the environment. It allows for an assessment of the risk-weighted consequences of various options. The principle of prevention, the key point here is the avoidance of future contamination. So as we start to see newer frameworks, legislation, and guidance come out, we also want to avoid future contamination. Risk-based approach requires that human health and/or environmental risks need to be commensurate with site use. And risk-based approach underpins a lot of the environmental management that we see. The other principle is called an options hierarchy. This means that if there is contamination on site, then the best approach is to treat it on site. If that is not possible, then the contamination may need to be taken off site for treatment. If that is not possible, the next option would be to contain that contamination so that it remains on site and there is no risk. And if that is not possible, then the contamination may have to be taken off site, such as to a landfill scenario. Another principle that underpins the remediation framework is called sustainability. Sustainability refers to an integrated assessment of the environmental, economic, and social impacts of remedial activities, which meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So this definition is compatible with the ISO on sustainable remediation, and we've been working on it for a while. So these are some of the principles. There are a few others, but these are the ones that I've picked to talk about here. So I talked about the philosophy section and the principles that are in it. The other part of the National Remediation Framework is called practice. Now this is where all of the 24 guidelines on remediation are placed. This section is quite heavy. It's about 100 pages long if you combine them together. So it's a very substantive part of the NRF. So just to summarize, because it is such a large body of work, I thought I would go over it in stages. So the NRF focused on 3 distinct stages in the NRF. And then there are a number of guidelines that apply to these stages. I will explain these stages over the next few slides. The first stage is define. This step determines what remediation needs to achieve. So why are we remediating and how much should we remediate? Once it is decided that remediation needs to be carried out, that starts the remediation process. So this is where the assessment framework finishes and the remediation work begins. Stage 1 define is an important step because it brings assessment and remediation together. This is a critical step because it tries to bridge the knowledge gaps between assessment and remediation. So it acknowledges that there might be some knowledge gaps from when an assessment is done and when remediation begins. The reality is that assessment may have been completed by different consultants at a different time and for a specific purpose, which may only be to know if there is an unacceptable risk. It is not necessary that all information needed to develop a remediation action plan is also investigated. A bit more research is needed on the site before remediation can commence. So at this stage, the remediation objectives are developed, and this ensures that there will be no unacceptable risk to receptors from the site after remediation. The relevant guidelines addressing this stage is guidelines on regulatory considerations. So these are different jurisdictional requirements. There are differences among jurisdictions, so we acknowledge this in this guideline. Guideline on regulatory, on remediation objectives, and the guideline on the role of auditing are particularly applicable at this stage. Now, this is a diagram I often use in my presentation, and what I try to demonstrate is the importance of having a clear roadmap to designing the remediation plan. When we talk about assessment, more and more assessment can be done in order to be conservative so that every risk aspect is covered off. On the other hand, if we have more and more information to assess risk, we have greater certainty. And the million-dollar question is, where is the balance between conservatism and certainty? If we are on the side of conservatism instead of certainty, we may come across issues of over-remediation and unsustainable solutions. On the other hand, if there is greater certainty but less conservatism, remediation can be more targeted and excessive conservatism avoided, such as through having numerical site-specific screening criteria or modeling contaminant fate and transport. And these are often costly endeavors as well. Now we get to the second stage, which is design of the remediation phase and its execution. So now we have remediation objectives have been covered off. The next step is to understand how the remediation would be designed and executed. This is also where validation data is collected. What is the best remedial strategy? How do we determine the best strategy for that site? Then there is the development and execution of the strategy through a remediation action plan. In the framework, there is an optional guidance and tool for conducting cost, benefit, and sustainability analysis. There are 13 technology guides to assist in remediation options assessment. For each technology, the weight of evidence is also explained if using technology to later assist in validation and closure of the site. So we've tried to integrate validation, remediation objectives, and remediation technologies, weight of evidence in this stage. There are quite a few guidelines that apply in this stage. So these, once again, guidelines on regulatory considerations, guidelines on remediation options assessment, 13 technology guides, cost benefit sustainability analysis of remediation alternatives. And then also there are guidelines on on-site health and safety, documentation and record keeping, and stakeholder engagement. So these last three apply to across all of the remediation process.
22 minutes.
Okay, we have now reached the third stage in the remediation process, that is to finalize remediation. Here it is assessed whether remediation objectives have been met, how they have been met, and whether remediation can be considered complete. A useful comparison at this stage is to see whether the remediation performance and validation data match the remediation objectives. So here we need to see if we are meeting our remediation objectives. And it also discusses options if remediation objectives are not met, such as if there is a need for long-term monitoring or institutional controls at the site. The guidelines are practical outcome based, so they tell you how to do something and when to do it, and they are modular and flexible so that they may be updated over time. It builds on current practice and guidelines, and it's available. It's all available now on a website. This is just the homepage of that website. So to summarize, the National Remediation Framework provides a structure for thinking through remedial strategies. It provides a more rigorous approach for considering issues, systematizes practices being applied to states. It provides a sustainable approach to remediation and management, and provides a seamless linkage with the NAPM, the assessment framework. Together with that assessment framework, the NRF provides a comprehensive guidance for assessment, remediation, and management of contaminated sites in Australia. When the heads of EPA endorsed the NRF, Cheryl Bettigold, who is the chair of HEPA, stated that the NRF is a significant body of work, and I congratulate CRCK on this considerable achievement to finalize 24 guidelines after extensive consultation. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation. I would like to thank the organizers at REMTech for accepting this paper. I also thank my colleagues in CRCK, and thank you all for your participation, of course. I miss not being present in person at REMTech in Ferrara, as do you all, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jyoti. You really accomplished and took the challenge for getting in to 15 minutes. Great. And thank you for the presentation. In particular, I like the thing about providing for the philosophy and the practical issues. That's really great. And I'm happy to see you back on at the final discussion. But now we need to move from Australia, still staying to the Far East, let's say, to China. And I would like to welcome Dejiu at Tsinghua University. He was one of the very first colleagues I mentioned in China, who was jumping on the train and then bringing sustainable remediation to China and the East. So Deji, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dharma. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. You're on.
Great. Good morning and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen and dear friends. It's a great pleasure to be able to speak today at this great forum, and I want to express my gratitude to the organizers and the scientific committee. And my topic today is about sustainable soil use and management. We are all interested in sustainable remediation, which is the main theme of this session. I started doing research on sustainable remediation about 10 years ago. And I just did a quick bibliography search in Web of Science, which is the main database for scientific literature. And I found the earliest journal paper mentioning sustainable remediation in fur phrase was 1999. But if we look at this list, we can see in the first 10 years, the number of scientific publication was quite limited. It varied from 1 to 5. But in the most recent 10 years, it grew pretty rapidly from 5 in 2010 to 10 to 2011. And now in 2020, has already reached over 80 publications. So we can see this field about sustainable remediation is really drawing interest. And I'm glad that I think I started early on this topic. And I also look at the authors, the researchers who published in the academic field. And surprisingly, I found my name popped up at the very beginning. I didn't even realize I already published 40 journal papers on the topic of sustainable remediation. And on the one hand, I do remember I did a lot of research on this. On the other hand, I want to say in the most recent few years, when I think more about sustainable remediation, I start to wonder, like, where do we move in the future? Because we have done a lot of discussions on reuse, on secondary impact, and it has been almost 2 decades since people first brought up this topic. And what do we need to do more to further promote sustainable remediation to make it more durable. And one thing I thought about is sustainable soil use. And I also did a search on soil and sustainability. Apparently, this is a larger research area. I mean, the number of publications is in the thousands. And I also see very rapid growth in the past decade or so. It grows several times. I mean, this is much faster than the general soil science field. So I think that people are increasingly interested in sustainability when it comes to soil. And I think soil remediation also needs to look at this bigger picture. And when I did this literature search, and also realized that soil science is increasingly linked to other disciplines. For example, agronomy, climate science, ecology, environmental science, social science, and so on. So I'm trying to come up with an interdisciplinary framework for us to better understand how soil pollution studies or soil remediation studies can fit into this bigger picture. So when it comes to soil pollution, I think the effects of soil pollution is multifaceted. And traditionally, for us, when I say us, I mean the conference attendees, I think most of us are from the contaminated site remediation community. For us, the protection of public health is probably the #1 priority. So we always think about the health risk and things like that. But I think there are also other factors. For example, does it threaten food production? I think this one is not so often brought up in our community. But more recently, especially in China, I think this is a big deal because we have a huge amount of contaminated agricultural land. So we have a strong demand for remediation of agriculture field. So that is becoming more important. And the third one I want to bring up is about the primary production and carbon capture. And also apparently when soil is polluted, the plant growth and everything is jeopardized. And also the ecosystem and the biodiversity. Next, I want to go to talk about China. I mean, the soil pollution in China is quite serious. A national soil quality survey published in 2014 showed that there is 16% of soil quality exceedance. For agricultural soil, the exceedance rate is 19%. For heavy industry, it's 36%. So this is really serious. Because of that, the Chinese government released an ambitious action plan in 2016. It was expected to stimulate around 3 trillion yuan of GDP growth. It involves around $70 billion investment. So this was a fast-paced action in China to deal with the soil pollution and to promote remediation. However, the work that's being done in China, it aligns very well with what has been done in the US and in the other parts of the world. I think it also inherited the problems. One thing I have been thinking about is I think the current paradigm of soil remediation have focused too much on human health. And it's even more biased toward the concentration rather than the actual health impact. Because of that, I think that the current method doesn't fully meet the sustainability principles. One thing I have always thought about is about the remediation standard. In China, because of what has been said in the US technical guidelines, the Chinese government has adopted 10⁻⁶ as the remediation goal. So we use 10⁻⁶ to estimate the acceptable site-specific remediation target. But I think that's not necessarily right, because 10 to minus 6 is kind of arbitrary, right? I mean, why is 10 to minus 6? Why not 10 to minus 5? In the US, actually, it's between 10 to minus 4 and 10 to minus 6. That's a 100 times difference. Then why you choose one rather than not another? So in my view, it should be the net benefit that matters. When we do remediation, there is always a cost. There's the environmental cost, which consequently has health cost, right? And there's also a benefit. What we need to do is to try to estimate the net benefit. And that's one direction I think we should further explore. And because of the limit of time, I do not intend to discuss more on this, but I think this is rather important. And let me go back to the remediation history. And we all know in the early days, 1970s and 1980s, because of the high profile incidents like the North Canal accidents, I mean, people tended to use the remove all approach for remediation. And in the following few decades, people use a risk-based approach, which is still dominant. However, in the most recent 10 years, we are advocating for sustainable remediation. But to be honest, I mean, we all know sustainable remediation is being advocated for, but not very well adopted. Why? I think there are a lot of problems still to be solved. I mean, in the most recent years, I think we are looking at life cycle secondary impact, nature-based solutions, reuse and resilience. I think all these are great topics and it worthy more research and more assessment, especially from a policymaking perspective. Another big thing, I think, I mean, a lot of you probably have heard about this more and more often, is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I think this should be a key driving force for sustainable remediation. When it comes to soil, I recently published a paper on Nature Review, Earth and Environment. This is a top journal in the academic world. And I tried to link soil pollution with 8 sustainable development goals. I think by linking soil pollution prevention and remediation with UN's SDGs, I think we can do remediation in a better way. And along these lines, one thing is the soil fertility. Even when we do remediation for industrial land, I think soil fertility worthy more attention. For example, for mining sites, I often see the type of technologies that are being used right now maybe is inherited from the traditional paradigm. I think looking into the future, maybe we can come up with a greener and more sustainable approach. And also nature-based solutions for green space in urban land. I see some very good case studies in Europe and in China. I think they worthy more demonstration and also I think adoption in other sites. And for agricultural soil remediation, apparently this is particularly important. And in China, we are facing a lot of challenges, and I think we need to do more to find where contamination is coming from, how to balance prevention and remediation, and how to increase or enhance the economic feasibility and also achieve long-term effectiveness. And for the long-term effectiveness, could be particularly challenging for like the mainstream remediation technology, like a stabilization for heavy metal remediation. Another thing is the climate change. I mean, apparently climate change is the #1 environmental issue these days. However, we don't think of it so much when it comes to remediation. But look at it. I mean, soil stores the largest amount of carbon in the terrestrial system, and we have to do more. And I think for the global initiative, it's called 4/1000. Probably you have a lot of you have heard, is to advocate for adding soil organic matter into soil. I think this can be incorporated into our remediation strategy. That would be really good. And also remediation itself. There are concepts here. I probably don't have time to get into detail. primary, secondary, and tertiary impacts of remediation. And the tertiary impact originates from the site use after remediation. I did one study for the city of San Francisco. What I found is, if we do brownfield redevelopment, remediation redevelopment in San Francisco for all these contaminated sites, it can reduce greenhouse gas emission for the next 70 years by 14%. That's a huge amount. So I think, I mean, remediation can really make a difference when it comes to climate change. Next, soil biodiversity, soil health. I mean, this is also a very big thing when it comes to the other topics I mentioned earlier. However, for remediation, we don't care so much in the traditional decision-making process. Thermal remediation can kill living organisms. Chemical oxidation can be also quite devastating, but unfortunately, these two technologies are the most widely accepted technologies in China right now. And then stabilization again. I think, I mean, we need to think more about soil health when we look into the future to find the most sustainable remediation approach. Management and behavior are also very important. In my view, technology itself does not provide a solution. Ultimately, it's upon the people who use technology. I think that's the most critical. So because I'm limited of time, I want to go to the final remark. I think soil is pivotal in meeting the UN's SDG by 2030. Soil pollution has multifaceted effects. Remediation must take into sustainability considerations. And to do this, I think an interdisciplinary approach is required. I think I have a little bit of time, and at the end, I want to advocate for the institution I work for. It's called Chihuahua University. I remember like 5 years ago, a lot of colleagues in Europe have never heard about Chihuahua University, but I think we are becoming stronger in the academia world. Chihuahua University right now is ranked #1 in China, #3 in Asia, and number 15 globally based on the QS World University ranking. For environmental science, we rank the #9 globally. So I think we are in a good position to do more research in this field and also to initiate all international collaboration. That's something we are really interested in. And with that, I want to thank you, and I also want to show you. I mean, I'm also organizing a international conference series. It's called the Chihuahua Forum on Environmental Remediation. The next year we'll be holding the third one, and it will be online and on-site combined. The last year we had about 700 attendees. I hope the next year we'll be attracting more attendees, and I want to welcome you to Beijing, or if situation doesn't allow, welcome you to attend the forum remotely. And I hope to meet you sometime in the near future. And thank you very much for attending this conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Beijing, also for staying to time. And yeah, thank you for your kind invitation. So I'm convinced that Tsinghua will get flown over by participants from all over the world as soon as the situation allows. And as you brought our views and invited already had this teaser for your forum, so this will a perfect start be in cooperation. Happy to see you again at the panel discussion. To all the participants, still the reminder that you're invited to drop your questions already now via the chat. So we will work on them at the final discussion. Here we come, and then we move from the East to Europe. And it's Hans Lenders on behalf of Nicole. So Nicole is the industrial network on contaminated land, sustainably managing contaminated land, and both the network itself and in particular, Hans Lenders are always forefront running. And what they started to work on during the last years is land stewardship. So Hans, please introduce us to land stewardship.
Yeah, thank you, Dietmar. And just when I'm setting up the presentation, I hope you can see my screen.
We see your screen, we hear you clear.
Thank you very much, and thank the organizers for having the possibilities to say something about land stewardship and about Nicole and about the mutual work that we're doing on sustainable remediation. And seeing the presentation of previous speakers, it makes us feel very humble as a small organization. I'm Hans Slenders, presenting land stewardship on behalf of Nicole, the industry network, and in everyday life I work for Arcadis. And I also have to thank Lida Schelwald, who has helped me really a lot with this initiative, and all of the others which you see at the first slide, which were volunteers in the working group on land stewardship of Nicole. Now, what am I going to talk about with you? First of all, who is Nicole? Who's that lady or girl? Or what is Nicole? Then shortly, what is land stewardship? I've listened closely the last hour and I didn't hear the word yet. For us, it's the next step on after sustainable remediation. We did some exploration of the concept of land stewardship together with Common Forum. Dietmar will also shortly involved in this. What are the key elements of land stewardship? And what's Nicole's way forward? I'll say something about this. We are about to present or introduce our quick guide, and I'm going to show you a couple of web pages of our quick guide. And in the right-hand side of my slides, you will very often see a case which we studied for our land stewardship initiative. And this is the Onondaga Lake cleanup in the US, which was kindly provided by Honeywell. Now, who is Nicole? Nicole has got another acronym. Nowadays, it's the Network for Industrially Coordinated Sustainable Land Management in Europe. Now, previously, it was the Network for Industrially Contaminated Land in Europe. But Nicole has moved on, and so they thought another acronym was needed. We think it's a unique European network for soil professionals with different backgrounds, mainly from industry and consultancies, academics, contractors. We work together with many others organizations. We consider ourselves a leading organization for the development and promotion of state-of-the-art solutions for sustainable land management. And what we do is we exchange knowledge, experiences, options. We organize workshops twice a year. Let me just slowly. Yeah, we monitor and contribute to European regulation. So we closely see the developments in European regulation, and we try to have some input on it if possible. We try to promote research wherever we think it's necessary or useful. Now, land stewardship. We started with the definition of land stewardship of the Canadian Centre for Land Stewardship, but we changed it a little bit, and currently we think that land stewardship is the collective recognition of the natural, social, and economical capital that land possesses or may possess, and the possibilities that this recognition offers for unlocking that value. So it means we have to realize what the value of land is, or what the capital is that the land represents or may possess. And by having this, you can really optimize the value of our land, which includes all of sorts of services, qualities, etc. You will see in my background, you will see on the front page of our booklet that we have, and on this page, a picture of the Lady of the North. That's a case in the Newcastle in the UK, and that's part of an industrial mining site that was redeveloped into a recreational park, and it's really enhanced the value of that area. And we use that picture as sort of logo for our land stewardship initiative. Now, in 2018, we started exploring the land stewardship concept together with Common Forum. We were working on sustainable land management. I was the chair of the Sustainable Remediation Working Group and was asked to look into land stewardship. So we had a working group on land stewardship, and we moved on from the redevelopment of brownfields and the temporary use for nature society to exploring land stewardship. What is it? And at the same time, the Common Forum in the working group Soil as a Resource was looking at circular and sustainable use of soils. And they realized that land was mostly privately owned by private organization, and cooperation was needed. So at that time, in 2018, we decided to do a joint effort, which resulted in a booklet that shows the benefits of the land stewardship concept. And you can see in the right-hand top corner the image of the booklet, Land Stewardship. You can download the book at the Nicole website. I think it's a great little booklet that gives you an introduction into the concept of land stewardship. Like we did before, we worked together with Common Forum, and I think that Dietmar already mentioned it in his introduction on risk-informed and sustainable remediation. That's a joint position from 2013, which was more or less a small basis for the current booklet on land stewardship. Now, land stewardship, some key elements. It's about visualizing value and interdependency. Of course, again, it's about natural capital, social capital, and economic value, and the benefits that land brings to human well-being and welfare. That's in essence land stewardship about. When you more detail the concept, it offers tools for optimizing land management because it effectively helps you to visualize the added overall value of investments to landowners. So landowners, if you start to invest in land, it will add value. It will bring you something. It will also make it possible to realize the value that industrial use can have of land for society because it brings you welfare. And it offers you a means of understanding the interaction between benefits, the use, and the natural value. There are many tools for visualizing land stewardship. There's no single pathway. Later on, I will show you some examples. And one means of really realizing what the interdependency is the wedding cake representation of the Sustainable Development Goals. You can see that the three elements, economy, society, and biosphere, and that the biosphere really is the basis of the society and the economy, which is illustrated by Sustainable Development Goal number 17, which is the needle straight through all of the Sustainable Development Goals. And of course, soil is part of the biosphere, is the basis for all of the Sustainable Development Goals as well. Now, what's the scope and the scale of land stewardship? Because that's different from sustainable remediation. Because it can be applied and it should be applied in different settings. You can look at diffusely degraded land, so also at large agricultural areas and urban areas. It can help revitalize and increase the value and benefits. And there is a difference between soil and land stewardship. We have discussions, for instance, the international initiative that OVAM leads, and they more look, in my opinion, at soil stewardship, and there are close links between the two. Nicole looks at land stewardship, mainly at industrial sites. Another setting is brownfields, of course. It's a perfect tool for looking at redevelopment by visualizing the potential of unlocking values. There are really some nice examples in the UK where you can see that every euro that you spend on a site comes back many, many times when you do a decent redevelopment. But, and that's the biggest difference with remediation, you can also look at active industrial sites because it can underpin the broad value of the use and it can help improve that value. And it can help improve the community relationship. One of the key elements of land stewardship, of course, is decision-making and stakeholder involvement. I already indicated that we moved on from sustainable remediation and what the work we've done in that field and the options appraisal. It already offered us a checklist for understanding options and opportunities. The sustainable remediation frameworks give you a stepwise approach to engage stakeholders, agree on options and indicators, how you can measure remediation, but also when we move on, how you can have indicators for land stewardship. It gives you a process which says you have to agree on valuation tools for evaluating, record keeping, communication. And again, I've said it already, there's not a single pathway. The route may differ in different settings. Every legislative setting is different. The level of detail will differ dependent on the scale and the size of your site. And we have to realize that land stewardship differs from sustainable remediation in a way that it looks at the full life cycle. When I show you the quick guide, you'll quickly realize that it's different. Now, stakeholder involvement, I will go through this rather quickly because it's elementary for sustainable remediation and for land stewardship. It's stakeholder involvement beyond the fences. Even more than with remediation, you have to look further than just your side alone. You have to identify the key stakeholders, their role. You need them for having a good look at opportunities and values for society. You have to collaborate, and you have to become proactive. And it's essential to have commitment of the stakeholders for the choices that we face regarding societal challenges. And it's all about awareness and common sense. One of the biggest issues in land stewardship is awareness and common sense. We have to be aware that our soils are valuable in the most broadest view. And the two pictures that you see in this slide is one is of a remediation project, which we done in Belgium. And on the bottom, there is the big group in Catalonia that installed stewardship and contracts and in Spain. Now in 2019, when we had the booklet, Nicole decided we have to look at it, what's in it for the Nicole members and what's in it for site managers. Why should we move to land stewardship? Why should we move on from a working group on sustainable remediation to a working group on land stewardship? Well, in fact, that's very clear because it helps you to reveal the hidden values of a site. It helps you to find the balance between impacts of your industry and the benefits for the community. It helps you in decision-making, in optimizing that value and the use of your land, in all life cycles of your site. And for many, many industries, it's also very important to help you in strengthening the relationship with the neighborhood community, especially in this time frame where we are in today. Because it helps you to communicate. Why do you do what you do? What can you do to improve the value of your site in communication or in a dialogue with your environment? Now, and then we arrive in 2020. That's where we are today. And this is sort of the kickoff of our quick guide to land stewardship, because we've built a website tool. I will guide you through the tool quickly. And it's written by the volunteers of the working group. You saw them all on the beginning slide of this presentation. And the guide should be applicable in many settings. And so it's a high-level guidance. The details it's mainly in reference that we provide. And it's a stepwise approach. You can see in the pic at your right-hand side, there are the stepping stones which you can take to move into the cycle of land stewardship. So the guide, in fact, has two parts. There's an introduction. What is land stewardship? What are the key elements? Why should I use it? And the stepping stones. In this picture are the stepping stones. And the stepping stones, again, have two different parts. One is the initiation phase. These are the two first stepping stones, and then you enter the cycle of land stewardship. There is an initiation phase, and that's mainly in there to discuss internally in the industry, what is land stewardship? Why should we do it? You have to convince your CEO to step into it. And how should we do it? How detailed are we going to work? And the guidance is illustrated with a couple of cases. Now let's see if I can guide you through the cycle of land stewardship and the web tool.
Theoretically, it would be 2 minutes, but I will allow you at least 3 minutes, okay?
I will do it as quickly as possible, Dietmar. Thank you. You just saw that I entered the Nicole website at nicole.org. When you click on the link there, you can see this is the introduction and this is the web tool. This is the introduction, so this is part 1, and it says you for whom the guide is intended. You will see 2 different links. I will immediately go to part 2, the quick guide. And this is the quick guide. So you can see the different steps, and you can click on every different step. And in every step, this is phase 1, the initiation phase. It will give you the objective. It will help you. What should I do at this stage? And this stage, I already explained, is to make the landowner aware of the benefits and importance of land stewardship. and which parties are involved. And at this stage, it's only the landowner, possibly assisted by a consultant. That's only in the initiation phases. If you then click at this step, you'll arrive at stepping stone A, which is when you enter the cycle, it's assess the status of the land. And obviously, if you go through the cycle, you'll end up again, after you've been working for a while, again in assess the status of the land. For time's sake, I will only lead you to step number D, which is I would say, the core step of land stewardship. It's the options appraisal in bringing balance between the natural, social, and economic value of the land. As you can see at this page, there's a couple of literature references, and you can go through these steps. For instance, I hope you can read it. Let me just enlarge it a little bit. You can click on this building blocks, and there it is. And you can click further, and you can see to the intermezzo, which helps you to build synergies between the values of the site, a shared vision about impacts and benefits, etc. So you can move through this tool and go back to the cycle again. I end up over here. So it's a helpful tool to help you move through the different steps you have to use, and that helps you with references. This is the tool, which brings me again to my last slide. If there are any questions, and they will have to wait until the end of this session, or you can contact me or Lida Schelwald or Nansu of the Nicole organization for this web tool. I hope my presentation was clear, and I hope to speak to you in the last part of this session. Thank you.
Many thanks, Hans, for leading us one step further from sustainable remediation to land stewardship. And I'm quite convinced there will be a lot of questions for the panel discussion for you. Nevertheless, so we jump over the ocean now from the Netherlands to the United Kingdom, and I welcome Paul Bardos, who is very familiar with all the cultures we have seen already, and is heavily involved to sustainable remediation in the UK. And I well remember that the UK was forefront running. It was the very first conference I had. It was in 2008 in the UK, emphasizing sustainable remediation or questioning it. And so Paul will show us probably the latest developments over there. So please, Paul, the floor is yours. Just unmute. Still not able to.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, that's fine. I see, hear you, we go. Take off.
I have some problems with this headset and microphone, which I got yesterday, so there may be a crisis, but I hope not. Thank you very much, Dietmar, for your kind introduction. Thank you to the organizers and the chairs for RemTech for inviting me to speak. It's my great pleasure to give this presentation on behalf of SURF UK. In brief, I'm going to introduce you to SURF UK and to our guidance roadmap. I'll tell you a little bit about our original guidance, including the Annex 1 guidance on indicators from 2010, 2011. I'll explain to you how we've revised and consolidated that to issue 2 new reports in July 2020. One is on sustainability assessment process, and one is on indicators. After I've drawn some concluding remarks, there's a list of journal publications, and I've also provided an annex which goes through the different indicator categories in the table that I'll show you. I won't be talking to the annex, but I hope that the slides will be downloadable from the conference, and then you'll be able to look at the publications and annexes at your leisure. So SURF UK is the United Kingdom Sustainable Remediation Forum, which took its lead very much from the SURF that was established a year before in the United States. However, we were ahead of the United States in publishing a framework, which we did in 2010. The way Surf UK is organised is it's organised as a project by a group called CLARE. CLARE is a not-for-profit organisation, which is the UK's Contaminated Land Knowledge Hub. And Surf UK is a very multi-actor. It has regulators, local authorities, industry, consultants, contractors, academics, all sorts of people, development agencies who are interested in the subject of sustainable remediation. So this is how our roadmap looked at the beginning of the year. And at the top left, you can see different categories going down in the column of information that we provide. The website for it is clare.co.uk, Surf UK. It's all free to download. And at the top, we had our framework, and we had the Annex 1, which is an indicator set that we published in 2011. And below that, we had a range of other guidance that we brought out over time, over the years following. I wouldn't want you to miss our animation. If you haven't seen this animation on sustainable remediation, it's only 2 or 3 minutes, and you can get to it from our homepage on clare.co.uk, Surf UK. And then we have a whole bunch of other documents in our roadmap as well. So our guidance on indicators was the first of its kind, and I'm not sure that there's many other checklists for sustainable remediation has been brought out. And the idea behind it was to encourage a broad frame of reference for sustainability assessment, rather than reliance on just 1 or 2 metrics like carbon footprint or LCA. We have 15 categories of indicators which are distributed over the 3 elements of sustainability, which are environmental, social, and economic. And within this 2011 guidance, we provided a detailed listing of possible individual choices within those headlines. I'm going to run through the headlines. This is probably the slide I've spent longest on. The first headline is to do with emissions to air, including climate change emissions. The second one, soil and ground conditions. The third one, water. The fourth, ecology. The fifth, natural resources and wastes. They're quite straightforward. The economic headline categories are a bit trickier. The first is what you would expect: direct economic costs and benefits. What's the cost of the project? What's the uplift in site value, for instance? The second is to bring in where there are also tangible economic benefits that are more indirect. For example, uplift in property values in surrounding areas. The third one is connected with how the project provides employment or stimulates employment, and also importantly, employment capital. And this term means the capabilities of the workforce, for example, their skills. The trickiest of all of them is the fourth one, which is like a tertiary economic effect, induced economic costs and benefits. And the simplest way to explain this is by way of example. So for example, a brownfields remediation project is carried out successfully, and it encourages somebody else to carry out a similar project close by, or it could do. The fifth category is very closely linked to the new guidance from the States, which has come out on resilience and sustainable remediation. It's also, I think, very closely linked to the idea of land stewardship. How long does the remediation effect last? What's the flexibility of the remediation? For example, the well-anticipated circumstances like a discovery of a buried tank, or how resilient is it to climate change impacts or economic changes? The fifth column are social categories. What is society if it's not people? So the first category is very obvious. The second category, we often have a reaction, well, what's that to do with me, ethics and equality? Well, a very close example of what it is to do with all of us is how far do our remediation projects solve a problem, and how far do they postpone them to the next generation, to our children? That's an issue of ethics and equality. Third category is more obvious: dust, traffic, noise, that sort of thing. And the fourth category is also one that people struggle with, and that's to do with communities and community involvement. So this is some projects, for example, reduce infrastructure that communities might use. For example, to walk the dogs is a very small example, and some increase it. And the fifth category is also a tricky one. What I want to emphasize is this is not to do with the uncertainty and the evidence behind the sustainability assessment process. This is to do with the fact that different ways of tackling a project have different inherent levels of uncertainty. So some projects options are more certain and easier to verify compared with others. So moving on from there, how much has this been used? Well, about 17,000 downloads of the framework and indicator set, and nearly 7,000 downloads of the supporting guidance. We know that it's explicitly referred to now in the process guidance from the UK regulators. We estimate that it's been considered in hundreds of projects in the UK, and we give some examples of that in the paper that I list later. And this paper also identifies references to the SURF UK indicators in a number of other countries and contexts. So our new guidance, oh, did I forget? There's a great animation on this homepage that you should really have a look at. But the new guidance is now available on the website, and it's 2 reports. And the first report, Supplementary Report 1, consolidates all of the work that SURF UK has done in terms of the process of sustainability assessment and why you would do it. And it has a number of annexes to help people with sustainability assessment processes. The second one is drawn more closely around the idea of indicators, and it provides more information about the functionality and the rationale behind the indicator choices that we've made. And there's also an annex where we provide a detailed checklist. We give information on the lines of evidence that you might use to support comparisons, and we map our indicators to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So that, in a nutshell, is what's come out. And the background to it is actually quite a lot of work. We spent a couple of years really thinking about and in consulting about the guidance that we brought out. And these 2 supplementary reports very much come from the feedback we received. One was, well, it's all a bit scattered, can you please consolidate it? And the second is that the indicators are actually quite hard to understand and use, so can we provide some more greater depth? And the other thing is, of course, to update both sets of guidance, in particular since our guidance predated the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN. In terms of the sustainability assessment process that SURF UK suggests, it's based on the idea of framing your sustainability assessment so you can prepare the assessment and define exactly what the objectives of it are, its boundaries, like its system boundaries, its scope, what things you're going to consider in the sustainability assessment, and the methodology. And this framing travels with the sustainability assessment across its tiers, whether you start at qualitative, semi-quantitative, or quantitative. The final step, of course, is to carry out the sustainability assessment, and that's usually a process of comparisons of individual criteria, aggregation of those individual comparisons, some process of interpretation and looking at uncertainty, and some process of findings. And it's usually iterative. We found that it's good to start the sustainability assessment with a small team rather than present a large number of stakeholders with a blank piece of paper. It's much easier for people to respond and consult to a preliminary version. So now moving on to the Supplementary Report 2, which is focused on the scope. Well, Surf UK wants to encourage a wide-ranging consideration of what is in sustainability, as I mentioned before. And by having a common set of suggestions in the checklist, we hope to improve the robustness of decisions and the transparency of assessment, because all users can benchmark the sustainability assessment against a common checklist. Our approach to indicator guidance is that we will seek to avoid false quantifications. We see a lot of people making numbers, using numbers, and these numbers gain a whole currency and weight all of their own, which disguises the underlying subjectivity and assumptions that we use to get to those numbers. So we're cautious about that. The approach that we have to assessment is also to avoid being prescriptive. We don't tell any user what to do or how to do. We describe an approach and invite them to use it. So we don't also assume that we know people's sites better than they do. So the whole checklist and the whole approach is very flexible, so people can determine the scope for their own purpose. The other thing that's been important to Surf UK is that consultants sell know-how, and we don't want to constrain that. I've mentioned the idea of allowing any stakeholder to benchmark the sustainability assessment approach. I think, in short, and I'll repeat this message again, I'm sure, our view is that sustainability assessment is subjective, it's specific to stakeholders and the sites, and therefore prescriptive and standardized indicator sets seem like nonsense to us. So in 2020, our UK headlines remain unchanged, although we've, except for one word, which I'll show you. But the workings in each category have changed greatly. One thing to point out is that, unsurprisingly, the environmental element of our headline categories is very similar to the green remediation core elements that the EPA have set up. I remind you that there's an annex of slides that you're welcome to use. And this is the word that's changed. We've changed equality to equity because we think equity is a broader term. So in terms of selecting criteria from our checklist, there are three broad steps: to consider, to document, and to finalize. So are the criteria in the checklist relevant? Are you confident that if you make a decision about this and chop something out, will all stakeholders share your opinion? So take a broad and inclusive approach. And also, we don't pretend to understand every site and every feature. Maybe there's something missing and you need to add a criterion. Whatever you do, if you decide that an individual category is not relevant, record your decision and why you decided it was not relevant. And the same, if you decide it is relevant or if you add a category, record and explain. And then finalizing is really a process of refinement. Maybe you want to adapt a criterion to make it more specific to your case, something that you can compare more easily. That might be because you want to use a metric or a quantitative measure for a particular indicator, for instance. And then record all of your decisions, what your final set of criteria and indicators are, the lines of evidence that you're going to use to support the comparisons that you're making. And these may be qualitative comparisons as well as quantitative ones.
Oh, with the method of fairness against hands, 2 minutes, theoretically and practically.
So we have in our checklist about 73 individual considerations. We cross-link them to other indicators where there may be duplication or confusion. And as I've mentioned before, we benchmark them against the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So to conclude, Surf UK does not feel that there is one light and truth, one universal approach that defines how sustainability assessment should be carried out. So we offer guidance and not obligation and prescription. What's very clear, whether it's a quantitative, semi-quantitative or qualitative approach, is that the structure, the hierarchy of indicators and categories you use affects outcome. But we believe that's something that the users should decide. They just need to record what they do. For example, we have climate change included in an overarching category called air emissions or emissions to air. There will be many stakeholders in projects who would want that as a headline. We think our approach is good for the UK, and we hope it's got flexibility to be used elsewhere, but how it's used depends on each country's regulatory and policy context, and also you mustn't forget culture. Some countries are more comfortable with numbers and less comfortable with qualitative approaches. But where we're firm in our view is that we don't think there's any such thing as an objective sustainability assessment. Some components that are quite important may simply defy quantification. Many components are strongly linked to stakeholder values, and it's always subject to the context of the site and the project. And that, Dietmar, is it. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening to me. Here are the journal publications. You'll be able to download these slides, I hope, and access them.
Well, thanks, Paul. Perfect. So we are now more or less at 1 p.m. here in Central Europe, which leaves us half an hour for discussion. How we're gonna run it? It's we go through the 4 presentations, 5 minutes each for dedicated questions to the different speakers, and then we would have 10 minutes more for more general questions and to bring everybody in interaction maybe. So we start again with Australia. It's getting late night there, and I would like to invite Natalia to start with the question session. Please, Natalia.
Thank you, Dietmar, and thank you to all the speakers. It was really interesting. I have a question for Jyoti. I would like to know if the NRF consider adaptation strategies for those cases for which remediation is not feasible. I saw that you have a hierarchy on what to do, but the last option is containment, but have you considered also changes in land use, for example, or other adaptation strategies?
Sorry, Natalie, I'm not sure I got your question clearly.
Okay.
If you could just...
Yeah, when you mentioned that you have a hierarchy for addressing the remediation, right?
Yes.
You decide on-site, off-site. I wonder if you also consider adaptation strategies, for example, land use change, in case remediation is not feasible.
Okay, so there are probably 2 different things. In that case, there is, in the case of the options hierarchy, we know that there is contamination at the site and something needs to be done about it. If you're asking then if contamination needs to be on site, whether there would then be a consideration to change land use, I think it's a difficult one because that decision is to be made very early on in the remediation process when we're setting remediation objectives. So when setting remediation objectives, usually the criteria for remediation is based on the most sensitive use. So at that time, very early on in the remediation process, that conversation needs to be had with regulators, whether the site, what is the most sensitive use of this site and future use of the site. However, and then after that, remediation options are looked at to see which option would be the best to bring remediation down to that level and get rid of the unacceptable risk. However, sometimes through remediation can be complex, and you can be at a stage where it is not possible to further reduce the risk at the site. And at that stage, if at that stage it can be demonstrated that further remediation is not practicable, then regulators can be brought into the conversation, and one of the other options then becomes institutional controls. If regulators agree, then perhaps there needs to be a control at the site. And maybe there can be a further conversation on changing land use at that time.
Okay, thank you. I just want to remind everyone that you can both raise your hand to ask questions or put them on the chat, so we will translate them or pass them to the speakers. So anyone has any question for Jyoti? Okay, if not.
Or should I add on? Because what I really wanted with the presentation is what was astonishing to me, and it's coming back to what Paul showed us, is of not being prescriptive. And well, I always considered Australia to be Anglo-Saxon. And I wonder why to put the options hierarchy before sustainability in the principles wouldn't be prescriptive, Jyoti.
Oh, but those are just principles. They're not prescriptive. They're just principles, and yeah.
There is no hierarchy in the principles.
No, there's no hierarchy in the principles. The options hierarchy was one principle where the first thing usually is to remediate on site, and if that's not possible, then remove the contamination off site and then remediate it there. If that's not possible, contain the contamination on site. If that's not possible, then get rid of the contamination at the landfill. Unfortunately, a lot of the times it's the fourth option that gets taken up, and the idea of sustainable remediation is probably to remove that, minimize that.
Okay, thank you for clarification. Carlos, anything from your side? No? Okay. So as well for the chat, I don't see any question. Natalia, something more from you to Australia?
I have also one question that maybe is less related, but maybe you can clarify, because I guess it's interesting for other people, other participants as well. How do you tackle orphan sites? Do you follow the same framework for them, or is there a specific way of treat them?
So we don't have a super fund site for orphan sites, but I think jurisdictions sometimes have got funding to deal with orphan sites themselves. We're not a regulator, we don't deal with them in that way, but we would think that the remediation framework, once the site is identified and remediation needs to occur, then that framework would apply to all sites.
Okay, thank you.
And just to be able to, you can hear me, I think. Just to add to that, I think there are some lovely examples from the Land Trust in the UK for orphan sites as well, where you can see, show the added benefits of redevelopment, just broad land stewardship, which really could be helpful. So I think that's good to understand, to look at those examples.
Okay.
Thank you, Hans, for the intervention. And finally, one last question, Jyoti, still. It's about you introduced the 3 modules, which are more or less then along the timeline of projects. By the experiences you have so far in Australia, which is the most crucial or influential in your framework?
Which is the most important stage?
Yeah. Or are they all equally important?
I think they're all quite important on their own. They all need to be done properly, otherwise you're in that endless loop of trying to get to site closure, and you're not able to do that. The most challenging to develop was the first module, because that was where we needed to bridge the assessment and remediation frameworks. And I think, as I said, assessment, we're usually just looking at whether a risk is acceptable or not, and then deciding if remediation needs to take place. But the reality is that remediation decision-making cannot really begin unless you have a better understanding of the site. And so in reality, remediation works actually starts somewhere within assessment, but that's not always the reality. So it was important to understand how to bridge that. Another example is that in Australia, we have health screening levels and ecological screening levels, and they are risk-based criteria. They are not cleanup criteria. So we had to be very careful with the language on how we state those, and we don't call them cleanup criteria. I think a future program of work for us in the future is to come up with cleanup criteria, because we've decided they're not the same thing. Screening levels are very conservative.
Okay, many thanks for clarifying. Now just to move over to China and Dehi. So Natalia, would you like to start?
Okay, I also have a question for Dehi. How do you foresee the use of innovative technologies on sustainable remediation, Dehi?
Could you say that again, Natalia?
Yeah.
Sorry,
how do you foresee the use of innovative technologies? For example, the use of mapping or
okay.
remote sensing. Sorry, the word didn't come to my mind. So remote sensing, for example, on sustainable remediation.
Okay. So talking about innovative technologies usage in China, I think we have some time to catch up. Right now, the most widely used approaches are the traditional techniques like stabilization and solidification, like in situ chemical oxidation and the thermal desorption, for two reasons. One is that they are more mature, and the technology vendors in China tended to import the technology from foreign vendors. For example, for thermal desorption, I know some large-scale projects are using vendors from Denmark, from Canada, from the UK, from US. So I think we are getting those more mature technologies from the Western world. And when it comes to innovation, I mean, there are a lot of researchers who are now doing more research in soil remediation. However, I think it takes time from research to commercial usage. And the one thing that in China, I think we are probably leading or I mean, from the runner is in phytoremediation. So Chinese researchers have done a lot of research in phytoremediation. So there are some commercial application of phytoremediation for contaminated agriculture field remediation. Other than that, I don't see a lot of innovative technologies being used widely. And to be honest, like, I mean, bioremediation is still viewed as innovative in China, even though it's right now probably the dominant type of remediation technique in the US for chlorinated solvent. But in China, I mean, we still don't use it. So I think it will take some time.
Okay, thank you, Dai. Dietmar or Pavlos, do you have any other question?
Yes, I do actually.
Edgy abstract as well. I wondered, because there you addressed the big data issue, machine learning. So do you see any, well, developments towards in China already in the soil community, or just to get an idea why you addressed it?
You mean the big data? Big data?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes. So there are some interest in this. For example, one thing is we are doing large-scale investigation of soil quality. Just a few years ago, we collected samples from a very large area. I mean, we did something called detailed investigation for agriculture soil pollution, and we collected about 500,000 soil samples. That's a lot of data. And right now, we are also doing investigation for 100,000 sites. So that's a lot of information. And right now, I am helping the Ministry of Ecology and the Environment to analyze this data as we speak. I mean, we did some like machine learning and we run some other algorithm trying to link site contamination with other characteristics, like, I mean, when was the site built and what kind of usage has it been for, and whether there was any leaks, and what type of pipes are they using, or what kind of like capping or the secondary containment, all those kind of things. All those kind of information were connected for these 100,000 sites. And right now we are doing sampling all around the country. So we still don't have the analytical data for all these sites, but we will get them at the end of this year. So early next year, we will have to use, I mean, tools for bigger data to analyze all that huge data set. And there are also other interests, because I mean, we have so many industrial facilities. I mean, I think there are probably 3 to 4 million industrial facilities, and people are interested. I mean, which ones were the detailed investigation, which ones may pose a high risk. So there are a lot of questions to be answered, and using like a remote sensing or using drone to run some high resolution image or other kind of remote sensing techniques. If we combine that with new data analysis techniques, we can probably get better environmental management strategy.
Thank you. Yeah, that was very helpful. So I have a first idea where China stands. Pavlos, don't know. Would you like to have a question to take?
Yes, please. Yes. You mentioned during your presentation natural-based solutions, and I think in order to achieve real sustainable remediation, NBS are part of the process, albeit very quiet time. Do you think that there is, or do you know any insights on innovation coming from that front, and how do you believe actually are we going to move into that front? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. That's a great question. I became interested in nature-based solution a few years ago, and we wrote a literature review, I mean a review paper, and published it on Science of the Total Environment. I think it became a highly cited paper recently. And in that review, what I found was that, I mean, there are some recent trend, maybe not so recent, but I think it's becoming more widely adopted. One thing is, industrial heritage parks. That's one interesting usage of large complex sites. Like in Beijing, we have a very large industrial facility. It used to occupy a big portion of Beijing, and the redevelopment of that site will take, like, I mean, tens of billions to do. And they are redeveloping part of the site into an industrial heritage park. I mean, at Tsinghua University, I have a course for soil pollution prevention and remediation. I organize the students to visit that site every year. I think, I mean, I was impressed and the students are impressed. I mean, I think that's one example where I think I mean, nature-based solution can be used. I mean, when I say nature-based solution, on the one hand, I mean, we use plant and other, natural habitat-based approach. On the other hand, I think the industrial heritage is also became part of the nature. I mean, and in my view, I mean, we don't need to necessarily remove them. I mean, for certain sites. So that's one thing. Another thing I like is green field. Also in Beijing, in northern Beijing, there is a very large site. There was an explosion. It's a petrochemical plant. It occupies several square kilometers. A few decades ago, it had an explosion. So there was a large spill. So more recently, when the plant was shut down, started to do redevelopment, people found, there is a very heavy pollution. So at the end, the decision was to do risk management and convert that general area into a large green field for the Beijing city. You know, Beijing is a very crowded city, very expensive city. So for the area which was converted into a green field, I think the land would have worthy billions of US dollars. But I mean, by converting that into a green field, green space for the city, I think it can bring a lot of value for the neighborhood and for the residents. I mean, it's not just the economic value, but more, I think, a social value and social economic value. So I think, these two, these two approach I really like. I think it can be further promoted because of the values now we see with the nature-based solutions. There are more techniques that I covered in my literature review, but I think for this I'd like to focus on those two.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And I suspect it's now time to move to Hans Slender, if is that okay with the chairs. Okay, Hans, I have a question actually for you. So basically, a major European Union action coming forward is the energy transition. And many Eastern and Southern European countries are now closing down most of the coal power plants, if not all. Well, actually in Greece, most of them will be switched off in the next 2 years. Only one will remain if eventually the government decides to do so. So all these, the plants and the related infrastructure, which in many cases include also coal mines, will create a demand for remediation and restoration. So the question is, how do you think that local communities, which basically some of them make a living out of those coal plants, can be part of the process and facilitate sustainable remediation?
Ooh, that's a good question, but a difficult question to answer in relationship to...
No, of course. Let's keep it simple.
Let's keep it simple. No, what I've noticed over the last couple of years is what's important in those initiatives. Let's keep it within the contours of land stewardship or sustainable remediation, if you wish.
Of course.
What's always important is that there should be someone or an institution driving the initiative, driving the redevelopment, of course. And this should have its focus on sustainable redevelopment or land stewardship. And my suggestion would be to look closely at the principles of land stewardship, the key elements for the party that starts the redevelopment, and how can you involve the community. Well, that's always very difficult because it depends on the scale. Just like Paul said in his talk, if you consider sustainable remediation, please upfront do a good explorations of the indicators or options that you have for a site before you start interacting with many stakeholders, because especially communities, for them it's new, so they have to have a good image of what's possible, and you have to guide them through the process. So you have to sketch an image up front. What are the possibilities for sustainable redevelopment of those sites? I'm not sure how the case of our logo, let's say the Lady of the North, how that was with interaction with the community. That was a mining site, a former mining site. It was a soil, a big heap of spills, of limestone spills, etc. And it was redeveloped. I think there was a close interaction with the community if there was a need. And in those cases, especially in Greece or in the former Eastern countries, it can help to show that investment really pays back. I like the thing that Deji said about the green areas in Beijing. As a society, we need also those green areas. And there are tools available to try to visualize the value that they represent. So in trying to, it's not only for the communities that surround it, but it's also for the redevelopers to realize that there's a lot of potential and value in redeveloping those sites as recreational or green areas, etc. So it can really help.
Any other questions from Natalia, for instance?
Yeah, Hans. Well, there was a question from the audience. Francesco Corvaccio was asking how or what administrative procedure must a municipal administration in Italy, for example, follows to formally adhere to international frameworks and to get the support of the Nicole network?
I'm not sure if you mentioned the Nicole network. I saw the question on the chat indeed. I think that's a difficulty that we have as Nicole network in producing a guidance for many countries, because the setting is different in every country and every region as well. I mean, this is the city of Brindisi. The local conditions are different, so it's impossible for me to say what procedure is needed. It depends on the local or the regional organizations how to do such a thing.
Okay, and I have a question myself. Because I understand that for implementing land stewardship, you need a strong social mobilization, no, to support these activities. But in countries with weaker social organization, how do you foresee the adoption of land stewardship?
Well, I think that's. I think with that respect, land stewardship is even more difficult than sustainable remediation. If you look what the complaints are of the sustainable remediation arena, many of us are active in ISWA, International Alliance on Sustainable Remediation, and there's, for instance, in our country where I come from, the Netherlands, we hardly see any sustainable remediation left, because there must be a big driver. There must be somebody who stimulates a governmental organization that stimulates that you have to move to sustainable remediation or move to land stewardship. So even in the countries that you were talking about, with a weak social driving force, I think it's key that the government or organizations that do have power stimulate land stewardship strongly, and strongly stimulate social interaction and communication with communities. So that's the only thing I could say to this. What's difficult is that I know that in certain countries, it's being considered to make land stewardship part of the legislation. And I think that's also a threat for land stewardship. If you implement land stewardship in legislation, so you make it obligatory, then you lose flexibility. And I think it became clear also from the presentation of Paul Bades that there are no strict indicators, quantitative indicators. So it's always subjective, always. Sustainability and remediation, and also land stewardship, which is rather similar, will always be more or less subjective. So making it part of legislation makes that you need protocols, guidances that are rather strict and detailed. So that's, in my opinion, would be a big threat. Especially the Nicole members, industry members say, we would like to have the flexibility to move so. In the current time frame, it's important that you don't need legislation to push companies, because through the internet, through multimedia, social media, there's already a driving force.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Natalia. I'm doing a lazy job as your timekeeper. So we are now sharp 1:30, so which would be the breakdown, but I think we can allow for some 5 minutes more to come over to Paul. Natalia, would you like to start?
Okay, for Paul, there was also one question that came to my mind regarding the SDG 3, which mentioned soil pollution, but indeed there are no targets. And I wonder, how do you foresee to introduce those indicators that you propose under SARF UK into the SDG? and if it's possible for countries to adopt them and start reporting on them.
I just want to repeat your question, Natalia, to make sure I understand.
Yes.
So you're talking about there's some countries that don't have targets for soil remediation, and how would you encourage them to use indicators for sustainable remediation if they do not even have targets in their legislation for remediation? Is that correct?
Yeah, because indeed SDG 3 doesn't include any specific target for soil. It mentions it on the title, but it doesn't include it. So how do you foresee the adoption of those kind of indicators?
It's a difficult question, because obviously if there's no reason for anyone to do any remediation, they may not do a project, whether it's a sustainable project or not. I'm not sure if this is an answer to your question, but a number of organizations which are multinational, for instance, big consultancies like ERM or TAL, or multinational landowners, they take a corporate view. So they have a corporate approach to looking at sustainability and remediation. So for example, I was working in a project in Kosovo, which was a site remediation investigation being carried out by a Dutch consultancy. And they looked at what the local legislation was, and where there was a gap, they applied what they thought was best practice from other countries. So what you could do is an approach like that. Some countries will have some legislation but not complete, and others will have a more complete legislation. And you could look at where you can find guidance within the FAO that maybe make a list of guidance that countries where they don't have available legislation or technical guidance themselves, you can offer them a library of resources that they can use. I'm not sure if I've really understood the question you're asking me. Is my answer going in any direction that's useful to you?
Yeah, indeed it is, but I was referring to the Sustainable Development Goals.
Okay. So,
but yeah, more or less it's the same, because if countries do not have any legislation, for them it's difficult to report to the UN organizations on this. So maybe offering them a bunch of possible frameworks to adopt, it could be a possibility for them to create something at the national level to report to the UN.
Yes, I agree with you. I'm glad that even though I didn't understand your question properly, I managed to give you a useful answer.
So colleagues, any other question? There are no more.
One final question I allow myself, taking advantage. Paul, how would you describe any crucial difference in between the ISO and the UK guidance?
Well, we hope that we've benchmarked the UK guidance against the ISO. We were closely involved with the development of the ISO. I think that if there is a difference, it's just that we've gone to a finer level of operational detail. So we are providing the tools that can be applied to a sustainable remediation project that complies with ISO. So we're not trying to do anything different, we're just trying to help people out.
Thanks, Paul.
There are no other questions from the participants. I don't see any hands raised. So Dietmar, I think we can close here.
Okay. Well, we are at the end of the session, so let me provide a quick summary of our trip. we started our travel from Australia on the use of harmonized remediation framework and its current development. It's something that is very interesting, that's something that we at Europe perhaps also can consider and have something similar to the implementation of Eurocodes. We then moved into China on sustainable remediation and linked this with sustainable development goals as a driving mechanism. Nature-based solutions can have a prominent role in this, and in my view, whenever that is feasible, NBS can be more economical and socially acceptable than any other solution. From Asia, we moved to Europe to meet Nicole and learn about land stewardship and the benefits that brings to our society, seen from the prisms, again, of the Sustainable Development Goals and common sense. Then we reached UK to get introduced to the Sustainable Remediation Forum in the UK and its 2020 set of guidelines, complemented by environmental, economic, and social indicators. So, dear colleagues, after this first very interesting and productive session, we hope to see you at 2:30 for session 2 on sustainable remediation and risk management. Please do enjoy your meal and we will see you there. All the best.